Welcome to the AmericanaMusic.com podcast with your host, Sarah Popejoy.
Today on AmericanaMusic.com, we're excited to be talking with producer, artist, songwriter, Grammy winner Cam. Her four-time platinum Burning House reached number 12 in Billboard Top 200 and number 2 for Billboard Top Country Albums. She's written songs for Miley Cyrus, Sam Smith, and was a writer on 5 songs for Beyonce's Cowboy album. Her latest album, All Things Light, has evolved with even more depth and breadth as a songwriter and artist. We're privileged to have her on the show today. Welcome, Cam.
Hi, thank you. What a nice intro.
Cam, I saw an interview where you talked about your grandparents' farm in Southern California. Can you paint a picture of your time growing up and how it influenced your musical development as a writer and musician?
I was born in Southern California, and then when I was 5, my dad's job moved us up to San Francisco Bay Area. But we're very close with my mother's parents, and they had a ranch with just like 3 horses on it, not a working ranch, but a fun ranch. And they had one down in northern Oceanside. It's like inland. It's not even that far inland, but San Diego. So there's like palm trees and a blue barn, and it's really gorgeous sunsets. It's like one of the most beautiful places in my life that I love to be, very calming. And we would drive down a couple times a year just to like get to spend time with them. A lot of driving as a kid, but it was worth it because they would just, I don't know, play like old Patsy Cline records and Willie Nelson and Ray Charles. And it like, I remember noticing first how it would transform the people that I loved while they listened to it. You know, like they would like light up listening to their favorite music and dance. And I remember just thinking how much I loved that. And I learned how to hit like repeat on the CD player really quickly. I knew how to like operate it. I liked that feeling. I liked that feeling that we all got to have together. I went through a lot of different career options. Like I didn't really start thinking I could be a musician because I didn't think that was something that could pay your bills, and maybe true to this day, but I would say it's kind of a wild career choice. I went a roundabout way to get here, but then once I was here, I think I had a friend, Tyler, who was like, can you do country music? And I was like, yes. I love country music. My grandpa at that ranch would even like teach us how to play at the piano, and a lot of country music just has this like way of resolving and going back to the tonic or the root chord while giving you like the punchline of the story or like the truth that you needed to hear or, you know, something heartbreaking. And he made music a story for me. And I feel like all of those types of experiences in this like ranch cowboy vibes made country music feel like the home base for me, even though I listened to tons of other stuff. I love all kinds of music. I love being experimental and progressive or whatever people want to call it when you mix and match whatever you feel like mixing and matching. I don't feel like there's like harsh rules about it, but I think there's something to these very beautiful guidelines, not rules to follow, that if you can say something concisely while causing a certain tension while moving away and then having a release when you come back home and you're telling like in as plain of words as possible so that as many people can understand what you're saying, like in that moment as you resolve, like I think that is a fantastic format. I'll always think that is one of the highest art forms when it's done well.
That's cool. That's cool. And speaking of when you talk about influences, I saw you talk about Eric Church and Zac Brown, but I'm like, okay, wait, those are a couple, but obviously by your style, there's a lot of other genres and time periods. You also talked about some of the music your grandparents played, but who else were big influences for you?
Yeah, I'd say, you know, I'm guessing this is true of everybody. The beginning was mostly like I was borrowing what my family members love. My dad liked psychedelic rock and 50s, you know, doo-wop stuff. And my mom loved folky 60s stuff. But I don't think it like really sinks in until you're, at least for me, like 16, I remember discovering through somebody else the Indigo Girls. Like a friend of mine introduced me to Indigo, and I was obsessed. Just like, oh, these harmonies, because I grew up in a children's choir. So harmonies is like my main language, like musical language. And so I was like this, and they're just introspective aggressive and just, oh my God, I'm obsessed with it. So Indigo Girls was like kind of the main first, like, this is my music. And then I lived, like I said, in the Bay Area. And for us, like the coolest thing is like we grew up, we all listened to NPR, like we're kind of like a specific bubble. So I loved St. Vincent and Andrew Bird, just like random French bands I would find on MySpace, like anything weird would be the thing. And like, Dirty Projectors, like anything that it just like the more niche, the better was what it started to become. And once I got into country music, I grew up in high school. They would play music in the quad at lunch, felt like a movie. Like we'd have like an outdoor quad. We had at lunchtime, they'd play Dixie Chicks and Shania Twain and Tim McGraw. And Varsity Blues was huge. So all the guys would wear their cowboy hats with their jerseys on game days. I think the late 90s, early 2000s was like country music was mainstream in my experience. So I knew all of that contemporary stuff and I loved the chicks. I feel like when I got into country music and started really like diving into what my contemporaries were doing or like what was the scene was like, because I remember thinking, this is so naive. A friend of mine, Tyler, like, are you into country music? Can you write this? And when I started thinking I'll write this and I even could be an artist because they don't have many women. They're like short on them. Like they need me. I thought there was just not a lot of women that wanted to do it. Like I thought there was like a scarcity, which now that I'm here, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so naive. They shut everyone out. They don't let you participate. It's not funny, but you have to laugh because it's so sad. Ignorantly and maybe luckily, I was like, wow, they need me. I'll just march right in with my stuff. And I remember one of the first albums that kind of came out right as I moved to Nashville, sleeping on an air mattress with some roommates from Craigslist was Chief, Eric Church's album that is like, I'm obsessed. Like I'm still obsessed to this day. I mean, everything he does I think is fantastic. It was just so well put together. I remember thinking, this is the epitome. If I can make an album that flows like this, because he also has lots of different influences. He's not afraid to like step in and out of different types of song structure. And he seems free about how he's making it and how he wants to make it. Yeah, I was obsessed. He became sort of like over the years too, like a pal and like a mini mentor. I look up to him and he's always very supportive of me and has shown up for me at a bunch of times. Red Rocks, I got to sing with him and showed up with me at the Ryman. And it's been a fun, because it's hard, I think, in this job to feel like you have like a community. We're like a lot of freelance independent contractors, I guess. We don't really see each other. There's not an office. We're not hanging around the water cooler being like, what are you up to? So it's kind of nice when you meet somebody who goes out of their way to be supportive outside of a shared space,
Especially such an influence on you.
And the Indigo Girls too. It's been amazing. Like I'm friends with Emily now and Amy. Emily showed up and gave me a gift when my daughter was born.
Oh.
Yeah, we've gotten to sing together at a lot of like ACL 50th anniversary thing. They brought me out and I brought Emily out. She sang with me at a show at the Ryman in Atlanta. And like it's a really special thing when people you look up to then like your music and want to bring you into their world. It's so funny. Sometimes I feel like with Emily, she's joking. What did she say one time? She was like, something like, oh, I love kind of what you're doing or I love what you're saying. And I'm just like, you made me. Like, of course you like what I'm doing. It's like, you're like the godmother, but
Your album, All Things Light, which just came out, you call a patchwork of beliefs. You were in psychology research for a while, I read. How has that background influenced your writing, and can you expand a little bit on a patchwork of beliefs?
Yeah. I think when people would ask, like when you're young, they're like, what do you want to do? I think my answer was always kind of like, I don't want to do anything. Like I'm not really like a hardworking type. I don't think I'm work oriented. I don't know if that's a fair thing to say, but I am very curious. I have a really deep drive to understand why I'm here and who I am and what is going on. That part gnaws at me. Like a few junctures in my life where I'd had to like stare into the abyss of the unknown and just be like, what the fuck? What is this about? And what am I supposed to do in this situation? And I wasn't raised with specific religion. So I didn't have a lot of built-in guidelines where I think I've realized now when you're growing up, you don't realize it's different. But then when you meet some of your friends, it's like, oh, they had built-in prescriptions for how you should act and attitudes and ideas.
Right.
And some of them they have to unlearn and some of them they like having. But I just kind of hit a moment where I had my daughter and the pandemic hit. And so my identity was like so cracked and like the rug got torn out from under me. So it's like I'm a brand new person. Your brain literally rewires itself. My body's different. My career might be gone because none of us knew if you could even tour or do anything at that time. I just was like, wow, what do I have? Like, who am I if I'm not any of the things I thought I had been my entire life up till now? And I went into the studio kind of by myself at first when I finally could get away from the house, which was, like probably like a year in. And I kind of sat there by myself and was just like, okay, well, there's no expectations to meet. It's just whatever I feel like doing. And I think I luckily had spent enough time working on my craft that I had the ability to finally put into words like what I needed for myself. I had always been doing it, but I felt like I really made a leap on this album of like being able to express some deeper concepts and questions that I needed voiced. And a lot of them have to do with spirituality and beliefs and death. And turns out that I'm God is an Alan Watts lecture I heard that yeah, it was like, we're all God and we've just forgotten. And it's sort of like a thought experiment about, if you could do anything and you're God and you have all control over everything and you lived, all these different lifetimes getting everything you wanted. And eventually you're like, maybe I'll try a little risk today, and it goes well. And you're like, oh, maybe I'll try a little bit more. And eventually you get to this spot where you are now, where we don't know what happens after we stop recording this podcast. We don't know what the future holds. And we chose it that way and we love it that way. And I like that. And I thought to myself, this is kind of like the thesis of this whole album is I want to spend my press time saying, it turns out that you are God and so am I. I see God in everything. And that's not coming from a religious background. That's coming from meditating and like feeling like a hum inside myself and knowing, like a deep knowing that it's in everything. That sounds really spiritual and maybe crazy, but that is what it is. And so I made that whole album kind of around how can I use my own language to define these spiritual experiences that I'm having and spiritual questions that I'm having. Because I'm not going to lie, I got kind of nervous doing it because I feel like certain communities are like, we have our own language for this. And you're not allowed to use language outside of that to define spiritual experiences, if that makes sense.
Like you're thinking they may find it blasphemous or something.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, even though I don't mean for it to be blasphemous or difficult or anything, it's just using the tools that I have to explain what I think is probably very similar in the end.
So what's really interesting to me about it is because I was thinking really hard about it, that song. I'm a Christian. So as Christians, we say Christ died for us. Then we're born again and Christ is in us. Then I was thinking about that. And I was thinking about turns out that I am God. And that's kind of the same thing. You know what I mean?
It's very interesting. I spent time speaking with friends that are pastors and friends that are rabbis. And I feel like a lot of really spiritual people that I know, they were like, it's beautiful. It sounds like you're talking about concepts that feel very familiar to us in our faiths. And it sounds like something that everybody wrestles with. And I feel like the only few people I think that have a hard time with it, a pastor friend of mine said, it's because some people have a hard time believing that there is like divine in them. And they have a hard time with that. And I was like, ooh, that is so heavy. So everyone's allowed to feel how they want to feel about art and music. That's where it came from for me, at least.
Thank you so much for talking about that. I was like, I wanted to talk about it more.
Yeah, thank you.
When you go to the song credits on your album, All Things Light, many times there are several songwriters you work with on each song. So my brain has a hard time wrapping around that. So I wanted to ask you, what does that process look like for you? Is it in several sessions? Do songs get passed off? Or are there a bunch of people in the room? How does that work?
Yeah, you mean because you as a writer only do it alone?
Well, I've co-written with a third person in the room, and that was like crazy to me.
Like for me, because again, I said I'm not a hard worker. I know people who will work hard just for the sake of working hard, and I don't have that gene. Like my sister jokes during like high school sports, I was always out of the pool, getting a Band-Aid, going to the bathroom, or like sneaking off from cross-country practice. So I need something that is important to me and captivating as like a little thesis statement, bumper sticker, whatever the nugget is that starts a song. I have to find that so important to me that I will never give up on it, because it takes me a long time to finish songs. And it's very difficult. When I have that I care about so deeply, and I've usually, in most cases, I write like a melody and kind of like a lyric line around that, or a few lines, or I have like sometimes a chorus, or I have a line, and then I'll take it into people that I have to really trust or feel very, very comfortable at that point in my album process. Because whoever you let in, yeah, it's kind of a wild thing to collaborate, because one, is very hard talking about things that are not in front of you. Like music is not visible.
Yes.
You're having to use a language that is not actually the thing you're doing. So it's not even this, you can kind of show each other, but you have to trust each other that you're going towards a goal, and you're going to find it relative to what's coming out. You have to find people that you really trust. And I have people that I've worked with a long time, a lot of people that I've worked with for a long time that are on this, like Tyler Johnson and Simon Martinson and Anders Morrison, who was my reverend for my wedding. He got his certification online and married my husband and I.
Oh,
A lot of kind of keystone figures, Nick LaBelle, that are people that I know really well. So I can trust that I'm sharing things with them, or they'll listen to me when I say like, no, that's not it. And then once it's solid enough and it starts to like materialize in a way where it's like, maybe you don't have like the wallpaper on the inside of the house, but you have the structure and things are looking good, but you're like, you know what? I need this really cool flooring. And I know someone who's awesome at flooring, and I'm going to call them up. Ethan Gruska with those guitars on Turns Out That I'm God, or Slow Down. Like I know that Simon is fantastic with these old timey, very raw feeling. Then you can bring someone in who's like fantastic at that. And because I love this really wide array of noises. Sorry, I was playing with my daughter and got food coloring all over my hands. Illustrating this with pink fingers. You can call in people that you trust, that you know are so good at what they do, and they get to bring that in and complete my vision. So I don't have to be the world's best raw guitar player of 30s, 40s music. And I don't have to be the world's best, all those things, but I can bring them in to collaborate. And I think maybe on a deeper level, I grew up with a sister who's 18 months younger than I am, and I did everything with her. So my norm in reality is collaboration. I think it's very important for me to learn how to do things on my own. And I think that's why that alone time during the pandemic sparked some really important thoughts out of me. I would say my happy place is being next to someone I absolutely trust and making something together. So for me, collaborating is much more the norm. It would very surprise me if I did something all by myself. Usually that means it's like incredibly personal. Like Village was incredibly personal, or like this new song, Meet You by the River, is incredibly personal. So those are things I tend to do like alone, more just because if someone throws an idea out and I don't like it, I don't think I'm going to be nice. It's just, I don't know if I can nicely say no. So
you co-wrote 5 songs on Beyonce's Cowboy Carter album. 2 of those songs on Cowboy Carter were the bookends of the album, American Requiem and Amen. How did it feel to be in the room and a part of an album that would be artistically and socially historic? I know you can't foresee what something is going to be or how it's going to turn out exactly. But besides the great execution she had of that album, one of the greatest achievements, I believe, that came out of that album was that it brought a lot of attention to Black country artists. Did you have a hint of the gravity of what you were a part of when you were in those rooms?
If I look back, starting in 2019, maybe, I didn't realize how much gatekeeping went on in my own industry until I experienced it myself. And 2019 was the Me Too movement. And I think I started speaking to people being like, wow, I haven't had exactly these experiences with my crew, but how are you doing? And then I heard a bunch of horrific stories. I don't think there's any way just empathy alone is going to help you understand people's experiences outside of yours. I think you have to somehow experience something that then opens up your mind to it. And so I think at that point, I started going down this rabbit hole of like, how are women being treated? And then how are Black women being treated? treated. And then, whoa, look at the statistics. Like, they don't even have statistics on it. They're like, oh, well, there's nothing meaningful because there's barely any Black women at all, barely any Black people at all. That is the story, that you don't even have these numbers. So I started getting involved in like DEI committees and really thinking like 2020 rolled around like, oh, wow, when you open up the doors for more people, we have a better chance of not missing out on the next Dolly Parton and Linda Martell and Charlie Pride. We can all get the best music. That's what I would like. Mixed results, I would say, in the boardrooms on how open people were to understanding how actionable things could be. There were some changes that got made in some different spots, but I overall was very, very frustrated and very like kind of broke my heart, you know, that was like the state of things. Because I grew up in the 90s where everyone was just like, you can be president if you want, you know, like it just, I grew up in a time where for better or for worse, I thought we didn't have that anymore. And then I stepped probably into one of the few places, maybe not few, but one that is like country music was built when you look back 100 years ago when all these genres were built specifically for radio, built around advertising. It was built as a white genre, like hillbilly music. I know you know this, but I'm just kind of giving the broad overview.
No. Yeah.
That it's when they went out into the hills and hollers looking for people playing this kind of stuff, it was a mixed bag. But when they decided what they would capture and how they would play it, they decided this would be white people music because it was a segregated country at the time. And this would be race records, would be anyone else that wasn't white could be in the race. So it was fabricated for and by white, whatever white is, white people, and then separated out. So we've been sort of living in this legacy as a genre and as a business, whether people realize it or not, for so long. And it's how to untie that when people don't even really realize that's what's happening. Because now we're not living in a legally segregated society, right? So we don't think we're doing it. So you have to like re-educate everybody about how it went, why we're here, how to open people's hearts to what's going on. So I had been thinking about this a lot and getting into a spot where then I could contribute, because I think the most powerful thing you can do, because when you're telling people to their face, and showing them statistics. I'm not going to say it doesn't change minds, but it doesn't at a large rate change minds. Yeah, I think art is a very beautiful way of giving like a testimony to what's happening. And man, I can't even tell you how thrilled I was to be a part of something that was addressing this within country music, but using outside of country music influences to tell this entire story. And like, I couldn't be more, I don't know, like fulfilled for all the things that I did in different ways, trying to understand this issue and tackle it, and most of it being very, very frustrating. I'd say the most cathartic thing was being involved in art around it. And man, I could have never guessed how incredible, I mean, you know, obviously it's Beyonce, so it's going to be amazing, but she could coast, you know, like she could just make the same stuff over and over again. We all would gladly listen to it, but she went hard, you know? It's a very long answer. It's not just like I stepped into a room and was like, what are we writing about today? There was a lot of years of me thinking about this and spending time learning about it and not even realizing that one day I would maybe be a part of something like this. And so grateful that I got to contribute.
Your bio says you wrote the songs All Things Light out of an intense feeling of isolation being a new mother during the pandemic. It also says that you wanted it to be a body of work, of insight for your daughter, whose name is Lucy, which means light. Hence the title, All Things Light. I feel like your songs Slow Down and Meet You by the River showcase this the most. How has motherhood changed your approach and thought process as a songwriter?
Yeah, I think anyone who's a parent knows this. You don't have any time anymore, and you don't have any extra like fucks to give. Like you're so forced to focus. I think it realigns your little moral compass too. It's just like, okay, what matters? And then again, like I'm going to record something that will be in theory in existence forever. Like I'm listening to music that was recorded in the 30s. Like people 100 years from now could be listening to this music. So what is it I want to record for, eternity? And I started music in my mind, like kind of late, like I got signed at like 28 or 29 and put my first stuff out then. And I feel like I finally hit a stride where I could achieve a lot of the tones that I like. The effort into achieving what's in your mind is a very tricky thing to navigate because I always try and tell like new songwriters and new artists this too. Like, it's not that your gut's ever wrong, but your ability to deliver on your craft and how well you can relay the kind of internal signals into the outer world. You just haven't accomplished it in the right way yet. So your skill and your craft needs more work. Your inner knowing doesn't need more work. You should never distrust what you have inside you. And I think this entire time I've just been building my like outward skill set into a spot where finally like it kind of converged. I had a very free, maybe free fall at being a mom. Just like, okay, I don't give a fuck anymore. Like, what do I feel like doing? Because we're all going to die one day, and what is real? And so that coming out lyrically and then matching with, okay, what do I want to do sonically? Not being like, I want to be an outsider on purpose or anything like that, but just like, I'm not spending time worrying about whatever genre rules, like, well, does it sound country enough? Or is this alternative? Or is this Americana or whatever? It's more just like, if this was a soundtrack, what emotion am I portraying, and what sonically does that emotion deserve to help deliver? Like, it'd be a little vessel for like the idea that I'm trying to give you. So yeah, I would say motherhood definitely let me commit fully to being myself, because I only had like a small percentage of my brain to do it.
One of my favorite songs on the album is Alchemy. Now, this may be completely unrelated and just coincidence, but I gotta ask. There's a book called The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. The main character, Santiago, sets out to discover treasure at the Egyptian pyramids after a recurring dream he had had about it. First, I want to know if your song Alchemy was inspired by that book, and then can you talk about writing this song and what the idea was behind it?
First off, I love The Alchemist and have been to the pyramids on a whole trip with a guru who I did write about in Kill the Guru. So that was a whole thing. Honestly, the very first thing that I was trying to do with this song is I had a bunch of songs already for this album, and I started to realize it was very heavy, a very dark album. And I was like, man, I should swing for like something lighter today. And Anders Mortensen and I started this song and came up with that cool bass line on piano, and we were singing kind of just trying to be lilty in the melody. I was like, oh, let's just do a melody and let's not even think about the words. Like, let's just throw phonetics, and it'll just you can do this kind of method where you mumble sing words, and then you sort of like, what was I saying there? It's almost like a free write or like a Rorschach, ink blot test where you're like, what do you see? Like that type of thing. And I still managed to make this song that is so kind of heavy in these lyrics, where there's like the dust to flesh to bones to dust is a reference to like a Buddhist death meditation. So The Alchemist definitely came into play once we landed on the Call It a Miracle. I called it alchemy, because it obviously has to do with me not being raised with that kind of same religious language too. And to me, like, that's always made sense. A lot of those alchemist stuff, or, alternative, anything that's like a new age spiritual stuff has been probably easier to access for me. But yeah, I think it's just, I needed to hear something positive that like We Are Golden that comes in afterwards is like, oh yeah, it's this ginormous life-death cycle that can sort of feel either terrifying or so beautiful. I need the narrative to be that it's beautiful. So that's where that came from. And The Alchemist, I think at some point we were reading it and trying to think about where it could play into it. And at this point, I can't remember if there's any exact references to it. That one, and I've always loved, I read The Prophet like quite often, which I feel like is sort of a similar lane of like poetic kind of poetry and stories being used to help understand our world.
I'll have to check that one out. I haven't read it.
Yes. Oh, you're going to love it.
And also on that song, so it had a little bit of feeling of, and I don't know if it was pulled from or if it's just because this person was a songwriter that I found out actually after I heard it. This reminds me of Big Yellow Taxi.
Yeah. Joni's in there. Because I wanted to say that We Are Golden. And it reminded me of her song. Oh my gosh. I'm like having a mom brain fart right now. But it's like, get ourselves back to the garden. Woodstock. That's what it's called. It was just close enough that I was like, I want to reach out to her and make sure that this is okay and have her be a writer on it, And she could definitely say no in that scenario. And she didn't. So I'm so thankful because it's such a beautiful beautiful part of the song. And I think it's always hard as writers these days to know when you're drawing inspiration from things, you know, like how to correctly credit someone and have them be involved. That's something that I feel like I see Beyonce do so well, is like credit everyone. So yeah, I wanted to reach out, and I'm so thankful that she's, because I remember that was probably the highlight of my career for my mom. She's like, Joni Mitchell. No way. Joni Mitchell like approved and is like saying that she likes the song, basically, to like have her name on it. So it means a lot.
I was listening to your song Canyon. It's one of my favorites on the album. For some reason, it reminded me of this other song. There's this Gene Autry song that is my favorite Gene Autry song called Riding Down the Canyon, which was actually written by Smiley Burnett.
Smiley. I was like, oh my God, the old school names are so good.
Aren't they, right? I don't think that's the name he was born with, but you know. The bass feels like a trot to me a little bit. You feel the desperation, and I love the imagery in lines like held onto an emptiness like midnight holding stars and trails we know like scars. I love those two lines, and I love the ooze in the background that are haunting. Can you talk a little bit about Writing Canyon?
Yeah, honestly, that song came together really fast. Nick LaBelle and Melissa Fuller and I were like sitting there, and we were talking about the cowboy art, picturing these like beautiful shadows and just what I feel like cowboys have sort of come to represent as like a lonely figure that's feels like a truer life, but a lonely life or something like that. But anyways, to me, the canyon is like the void in between. There was a time where I had another song that didn't make the album called The Great Divide, kind of like between what's on the inside and what's on the outside, and how those two like will never fully meet, and how lonely that feels, you know, in your body, that your mind and your mental picture of the world will never 100% match what the world actually is outside of you. And so I feel like this was kind of an extension of that. And I had this contemplative practices poster on my college dorm room wall, which feels so liberal arts. And it was like, the practices were like, you know, praying, walking, meditating, doing dishes, reading, like all the things that could help you sort of like get in this flow. And I feel like there's something to this like trot that's happening in this knack bass line that's so sick. Yeah, kind of like you're trotting along, but like how empty the desert can feel and how lonely it can feel when you have these big questions that don't have answers in your life. But then when you realize you're not alone, in the sense that like the desert actually is humming with stuff. And it's kind of like when you go to howl at the moon, everyone sort of joins you. I like to think of it as anyone who says they've got the answers, like run the other way. That is, nobody's got the answers. But there's something so human and contemplative practice-y about asking the question and calling out for answers, or praying, or whatever it is you're doing in the calling out, and kind of like the wolves that are howling at the moon. You're like, you realize everybody's doing it. And that's what helps you feel more settled in it, is that everyone's asking these same questions. And so there's something about kind of like this poetic, lonely desert landscape. I love the Gene Autry imagery. It's so romantic. Like to me, there was a Disney, it was like a little short cartoon where, remember, like the Mickey Mouse ball would bounce across the words.
Uh-huh.
Did you ever watch?
Oh, yes.
There was one that to me, it reminds me of this one where it's like, every cowboy needs a horse, needs a horse, needs a horse. And he's gotta have a song, have a song, have a song. If he wants to keep riding along. And like, there's something about that old Western cowboy jazz kind of stuff that, yeah, so timeless. I could listen to that all day long. So that one kind of touches on those things. And yeah, that was one of the few quick writes. That and Slow Down probably went the fastest because it had such a like complete idea.
Your 3 albums have been 5 years apart. I've heard you say you're motivated by legacy more than the money.
I've never heard it said that succinctly. By legacy more than the money. I like that a lot.
What do you want your legacy to be?
Oh shit, that is a really hard thing to answer. I don't know if I can fully answer it, but I'll just like say more stories at you. I will say, in college, I started collegiate a cappella group. I was a part of one when I first came in as a freshman, and I actually there was like some guys that were really weird in it. There was one specific guy who was really weird, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna start an all women one to feel a little bit safer. And I just grew up in children's choir, so I understood the like vocal range, you know, of like women. And so I started it, and I remember thinking when I started it, I really wanted to put things in place so that it would keep existing after I graduated, which is like kind of hard because there's a lot of people coming in and out of a university, and you don't really have like a staff member member that's responsible for you or anything like that. So how to build something that would last after I'm gone. Like, I've thought about that a lot, and I'm so proud they still are going. And this is like, they're like 20 plus years old now, which is crazy as an organization.
Wow.
And they actually came out and sang with me when I was in San Francisco. I don't know any of them. They're like so many generations, down. And like, we had our first marriage in the group, like from some alumni that met in the group. And it's just so cute. So I think that stuff, I don't know if it's like from my parents were always involved in, like, they both were in construction and construction management, and they met doing that. And they would always go to like city meetings to understand how the city was allowing certain buildings to happen. And all of that takes a lot of understanding of like a city and how its history and what its future is going to be. Those kinds of topics, I guess, were kind of floating around. And my grandpa had a business that like he built, and to step away from and how to make it work after you step away. Like, I think I was very aware of that. So I think it makes sense that in my music too, now especially, I think of it as a mom, like, what can I give? Like, it's not so much like it's what do I get out of it while I'm making it? But if I'm bothering to record it and put it out, I do feel responsible. And I feel like you kind of get shamed doing this, like as an artist, like, because like, that's not the way to make money. And all of us, hipstery San Francisco kids are like, that's the only way. Like, you gotta stay niche and small and true to your art and all that stuff. And how to find a balance of it while not starving and still paying your bills is incredibly hard. But I think at this point, I feel like I know my way around enough of it that I don't have to borrow other people's knowledge and experience. I can lean on mostly what I know to help make sure all my decisions are about giving something. And I'd say like the most recent thing with Meet You by the River, I wrote a little lullaby. It's for my sister, but I sing it to my daughter because she loves it. But it's about how we'll find each other. If something happens to one of us, whatever happens next, we'll find each other, I promise. And I sing it to my daughter. She loves it. So comforting. And she wanted to come out on stage in Nashville, and I knew she'd get all shy on stage. So I was like, I'll just sing your lullaby for you. You'll come out on stage and then you'll get to have your moment, but hopefully you don't, melt into a puddle while you're on stage. And that going viral, and then everyone saying, we would really like to hear this song and have it be recorded. I had a really hard time with that because I didn't feel like, I was worried I'm not honoring like the why of that song. If it gets like commercially released through a major label and everybody's got opinions, and it just, I don't know, it made me nervous. But then seeing what everyone was writing, it was just like, it's so helpful. I've had to sing at weddings and funerals and bedsides of family members that are dying. And that's when you really realize the whole point of music is that it's so helpful, giving people a way to breathe through difficult things. Like, it physically helps you breathe through a difficult moment, and it helps you have words and like a narrative frame when you're feeling completely lost. Like, it's just so important. And I think reading all those comments for people that how separated we are in like Western culture from death and how to deal with that process, it felt like I can do more good by putting this out than the small amount of like worry I had about capitalism and how it was going to play a role. So I recorded it and put it out. I'm glad that I did, because I think it's a really beautiful thing to be out there, and it's still touching people in such an amazing way. And my favorite thing that maybe I'll say I want to be my legacy now is that people are singing those songs in their own bedtime routines and at their own family members' bedsides and their own family members' funerals. And it's not even me singing it. Now it's theirs. And they'll add their own words and stuff. And they'll say they add lyrics that make sense for their situation. That is a legacy I want, is that it's not even about me. It's that I gave you something that makes your grief or your love or your family connection that much like better. And I don't even have to be in it. Like, I gift it,
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's like it grows and becomes bigger than you.
Yes. And I think that's why you don't see my face on this album cover. Like, I've always been like, oh, wouldn't it be amazing if no one cared what I looked like? If I could just make music and no one even knew. I don't know why I think that's so cool. And I think it's because that thing of I just want it to last and be more than me and my body, It's for the collective to like have for a long time, hopefully. That was really deep. I've never really answered that question. So that's...
Cam, thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview. I know your time is precious, and I'm grateful you took the time to share with us insights into your new album, All Things Light.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to AmericanaMusic.com podcast. Be sure to go to AmericanaMusic.com and find playlists of the Americana artists we've interviewed here. Also, be sure to follow us on your favorite podcast platform.